Join us for a driving review of the Nissan Leaf E+. Let's go! In the front we can see a friendly face, and here the unit there leads over to the headlamps, standard with halogen, still in lowest trims, but then middle higher trims always get then the LED and also a nice daytime running light right here. A striking blue, Thomas blue color for today. Wow, that blue really comes out well in the sun, doesn't it? Length 4 meters 49, 177 inches. That's here the Nissan Leaf E+. And wheels come either 16-inch steel, then 16-inch aluminum, or here the optional 17-inch aluminum with the best look and still some aerodynamic design. In the rear, the design of the tail lamps worked out quite nicely, I think, but then here, this area is very, very bulky and it's not used for trunk space or something, so I wonder what they did there design-wise. So there are two versions available, 40 kWh battery with 150 horsepower, or the bigger one here today, 62 kWh gross with 217 horsepower. 6.9 seconds is then the acceleration figure to 100 kilometers or 62 miles an hour. And the official range, 385 kilometers or 240 miles. However, if you use it also in cold temperatures or drive it a little bit faster time to time, realistic is 330 kilometers or somewhat 200 miles plus. And then about recharging, so you can open it from the inside of the car, or then here also holding the key, this lower button, then this charging flap opens, and then on the left side you have the DC charging, 50 kilowatt max CHAdeMO standard, and on the right side the AC max 6.6 kilowatt. A rather modern steering wheel, and the seats, they are here optional. Some microfiber inserts here, but then this is indeed animal skin, of course not making sense for a sustainable electric vehicle. But usually the standard seat would just be fabric, and there's also a mix of fabric inside and some leatherette inserts on the outside available, so both is possible. So most Leaf will drive with black fabric seats, and they are also a little bit better in the comfort and also in the climate comfort, both summer and winter times. Getting inside is normal compact hatch style, so seating position is somewhat okay. The fabric surface will deliver you a little bit more comfort, but it's not laid out for the tallest person as for the seating position, I feel, but it's also not uncomfortable. Here headroom, so yeah, it's all the way down with 1.86 or 6'1", still okay. The biggest weakness of this car overall, I think, is really this here. You cannot pull the steering wheel towards you, you can just pull it up and down, and that's it. Interior overview is rather simple, let's take it that way. Here there's a soft touch material with a blue constant stitch, that's quite nice. This is here hard pack. Then here the infotainment system. The software looks really outdated. Camera right here. This resolution is actually quite okay. You also have the fake drone view from above right there. And most important thing then probably will be using the Apple CarPlay, where the integration is actually quite decent right here. These are the instruments, right side analog, left side digital, and then you can have the digital speed, for example, or assistance systems change. And yeah, these lane keeping warners, for example, I usually have them deactivated because they're really annoying. Climate unit here in the lower part is easy to access while driving. This is here the separate heater, when the heating is directly taken from the battery. Of course drains range, but at some point in winter time you do need that. In the lower area here you start the car. This is then the smartphone connection, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and also for the seat heating next to 12-volt power supply. And this is quite interesting here, the shifting lever. This is reverse, this is D mode, and then this is B mode. B mode a little bit more recuperation, and even more recuperation here with this toggle switch here with the E pedal, and then you basically do not need the brake at all unless there's really emergency braking. And you can also set it in the digital instruments that it keeps the setting, so when you activate the e-pedal, that it stays in this activated e-pedal mode, that you don't have to activate it over and over again. Rear seating, of course, also simple materials here at the rear doors. And then when I have the seat as I would be driving, I have to be careful here not to hit my head. And you see it does fit for tall adults, also when the tall adult is driving. Also headroom wise, it exactly fits, but nothing more. And you see here how high my knees are in comparison to the front seat. So somewhat an awkward seating position here for tall adults in the rear, but you can live with it. So it's not the worst, but definitely not a really spacious area. The trunk capacity is 420 liters, and see they do not put a cover here in the lower part that they can use all the space also in the height. But then of course here when you fold the seats you have this step here, cabin trolley on the inside. Well, the normal cable is just here. You can also store it in this bag, but electric vehicle users know that at some point when you recharge quite frequently with these cables, you don't store in that well again. So normal length here is about 80 centimeters. Welcome to Thomas's driving lounge with the Nissan Leaf E+, so the 62 kilowatt hour gross battery and a strong electric motor as well. And let me begin with that exact range once again. So the maximum range you can score when you're driving primarily slow city traffic and so on is about 380 kilometers or 240 miles with that bigger battery pack. And when you then drive also maybe a little bit of motorway at subtle speed and so on, so a little bit more high speed driving or higher speed driving, then you rather score some consumption figures of about 17 kilowatt hours on 1 kilometers or 27 kilowatt hours on 100 miles. And that then means that the range rather goes towards 330 kilometers or 200 miles plus, just to be safe, that you really know what you can always score, unless you go like maximum speed on the motorway. Then of course it's the same actually with petrol engines, double the energy use, approximately like this. But indeed the electric vehicles, they drain even more when they drive than at the really, really high speeds. But that's also not what this car is laid out to be, more here in the city traffic. And let's begin with some of the features. Steering actually conveys a quite good feeling. There's no dead zone area. It's easy to steer it, but it doesn't feel unnatural. So I think steering feeling wise, it did a good job. Suspension wise, we are not the biggest fan of that. We do have the optional 17-inch wheels here. They of course look cooler with that vehicle. I have to say that the looks of this vehicle is not the primary focus as either. So maybe I would even stick with the 16-inch ones to make the ride more comfortable, because I'm really not satisfied with the suspension when we're going over some bumps here, like sewage systems, covers and so on. It gets quite rough. So suspension to me one of the biggest weaknesses of this vehicle. As for the seating position here, it's somewhat okay, but also not the best one I've experienced. When you do have the fabric seats, which are standard, and then they're also a little bit more comfortable because the fabric surface adapts to the body a little bit more. Also noise insulation wise here at lower speeds, you maybe hear that also due to the rather stiffer and rattling suspension. We also have some noises here on the interior from time to time. However, if you compare it to the previous generation, has of course been improved. It's actually quite fun to drive the vehicle. The electric boost is always there. You always have that torque quite ready. Different recuperations modes. Usually you would leave it in the e-pedal mode. Here that means I lift my foot off the throttle, the car is decelerating instantaneously. You can activate or deactivate the e-pedal mode. In the lower console it was only recently introduced for the Leaf. Then you leave the throttle and then the car is rolling if you have that off. And you have the normal D driving mode. There is also the B driving mode. This is then also giving a little bit more recuperation. So acceleration now, 45 kilometers, 40 kilometers. Whoa, 80. That was already 88. So really quick. So, and you maybe, not sure if you heard or seen, there was a little bit of gravel on the ground, but still that's some kind of a problem here. The tires don't really catch up with the with the power on the front wheels. So indeed we did have some front wheel spin right here. Now I'm going down here, you see difference, D mode, some recuperation. I put in the B mode, more recuperation. So there's the difference between D and B mode, and the E pedal mode, even more recuperation, even stronger. And then you basically just use the acceleration pedal for that one pedal feeling. And now we'll show you one big acceleration. So we put it, see here, 40 kilometers an hour. This car pass, these two cars, oh, they are driving very close. What are they doing? So now 30 kilometers an hour to, let's see. 140 kilometers an hour. Really nice acceleration, and now the top speed. Whoa. Is that even true? Goes 165 kilometers an hour. That's a little bit more than I would have expected. And you hear that noise insulation, of course, not the most ideal one. It's quite noisy now in here. And then also in this moment when I'm driving the maximum speed, also the energy consumption, of course, goes all the way up. And now to our conclusion for today with the Nissan Leaf E+. Exterior-wise, it's rather standard compact vehicle, nothing too fancy. Interior-wise, not the best build quality, but at least somewhat straightforward user interface. The infotainment system quite updated, but most of the time you would probably just use the smartphone connection. As for the space that is being offered, it's not the most comfortable car either. On the rear, it does fit also with tall Ls, but barely. And the trunk also not well used, but still you can fit a lot of things in there. Most of the things we can examine are rather mediocre, not really standing out, but also not too bad. That's the scheme about this vehicle. Driving, also quite decent. Again, nothing special. Suspension is somewhat a little bit rough. However, there's a good acceleration forward, definitely. That's a lot of fun. And steering input is also quite nice. And also the projected range was rather fulfilled, so it's also rather an efficient vehicle, especially when you also have the heat pump, which is included in the most models, unless you really floor it out on the motorway, but that's the thing with all electric vehicles. So overall, I think, it's not a standing out vehicle, has never been like that, but it has been very successful because for the price, you get a very decent range, and that's still the case. And if you then compare the new competitors, they are actually better in most ways. Driving dynamics, interior build quality, styling maybe, space that is being offered and so on. The Nissan Leaf cannot, stand out with these points. But then again, if you take a look at what you get from the battery or for the range for that price, then the Nissan Leaf is still somewhat attractive, so you would go for that if you don't expect too much actually, but want a rather cheap electric vehicle which is still good in the price-performance ratio. My biggest concern is really the steering wheel that you cannot put towards you just up and down. That's one of the biggest flaws of this vehicle. If they would fix that, that would be already quite something. It's not too expensive to fix that actually. So, what are your thoughts to the Nissan Leaf here in this version? At least some Thomas Blue color here for me today. That was rather pleasing. So, thank you so much for tuning in today. Also tune in to more electric vehicle reviews here.